All right, let's get into the big story of the day, which, of course, is all of this talk around nuclear attacks. We are, folks, I really believe, like, this is the most scared that I've been around the threat of a nuclear attack. And I'm telling you, we are inside the New World Order with the Great Reset unfolding right before our eyes. We are the closest we've ever come to nuclear war, even greater than the Cuban Missile Crisis by a landslide. This is even greater than the Cuban Missile Crisis. Last night, the Biden administration did all of their rounds and really made a terrifying announcement last night. And you got to watch this, like how the Biden administration unfolded this. On Saturday, they probably put out feelers to all of the major networks. Hey, CBS, 60 Minutes, we've got a story for you. We're going to send down Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and he's going to talk about how we're going to attack Russia with nuclear weapons. Okay, make that happen, Scott Pelley over at CBS and 60 Minutes. Oh, by the way, we want to go on ABC News with George Stephanopoulos in the morning. We want to be on CBS Face the Nation in the morning. We want to go on CNN's State of the Union. Any Sunday show we can possibly go on to, we want to go on there.
I mean, I don't even think it happened as recently as Saturday. I feel like the moment President Putin released his speech to mobilize and add 300,000 troops and issued the thinly veiled threat about if you use nuclear, we're ready for this, they were chomping at the bit to ratchet up their rhetoric to make it seem that oh no, we have the more scary technology. It's us you don't want to mess with, right? Because Putin's first speech said, I'm not bluffing. I don't want to do this, but I could, right? And so, of course, what's the response to that is, I have that. I have that.
And by the way, it's not just I have that. It's all of us in NATO, all of our allies. We are prepared to use nuclear weapons. And I think you better prepare your families. I mean, I hate to say this, but I think you better prepare your families because the globalists are pushing for a tactical nuclear war, which is what they're pushing for. So not a full-blown nuclear war, a tactical nuclear war. We heard this yesterday in all the rhetoric. I mean, and this is incredibly naive, I think, on the part of these guys to say a tactical nuclear war. Like you're going to just have like a little pinprick tactical strike and that's how it's going to end. No, it's going to elevate beyond a tactical to a massive, full-scale nuclear war. Clearly, right? I mean, it's an entire genre of literature around nuclear fallout. It doesn't stay contained in one thing. It's the entire a butterfly flaps its wings theory, right? This is a nuclear bomb. Well, they pushed, and by the way, I mean, they pushed Putin into this trap, too. And you wonder, like, did he fall for this, right? They have this NATO-backed coup in 2014. They install a puppet government in Ukraine. They continue to attack the Donbass for 8 straight years, violation of the Minsk agreements. They installed this puppet regime, and the people in the eastern part of Ukraine said, no, we don't see eye to eye with your Maidan coup. We don't see eye to eye with your breaking of the Minsk agreements. We don't agree with this. And Putin, I think, in many ways fell for this trap that NATO had set. NATO wants this. You could say that, right? But they are still trying to go about it in a democratic way by hosting Russia and the separatist regions. Okay. Because what we've said many times on this show is that history has shown us that this Donbass region did not want to join Ukraine in 2014, fought against it heartily, I may add, and has continued to be persecuted by the Ukrainian government and Ukrainian forces or groups inside of the Ukrainian government, and they are hurting. And there are many people there who want to become a part of Russia. So they took it to the ballot box this weekend, right? And they are saying, we're going to give them a choice. Now you, Western world, have a choice to either honor this democratic process or not, right? And then what? Well, we have till tomorrow, right? So tomorrow we have less than 24 hours, and I think everything changes tomorrow. So the voting was to take place from the 23rd to the 27th, right? So now tomorrow's the 27th. When people wake up in this region, we're going to be counting ballots. A large percentage of them are already in, of course. we're going to know how this shapes out. We know that Donetsk and Luhansk absolutely had an overwhelming number of people turn out. So if it's over 50%, over 60%.
It's over 50%.
In the other regions.
And the other regions already did hit 50% as well.
So that validates the vote.
Yes.
Yeah, that validates the vote.
I mean, but the question is for who, right? So the West, can him and Han say, we don't authorize, we don't validate this as a legitimate election, but it almost doesn't matter, right? Because if the border is moved across these regions, then Russia has said, then firing upon those regions, we will consider breaking our state lines.
So let's listen to some sound here in a second. First, Russia has called up the 300,000 troops. They've placed high-tech heavy weapons and heavy bombers on the border with Ukraine. This is no bluff. So after tomorrow, guys, we will see if there's any kind of movement, and if they then validate these votes, and that happens pretty quickly. We spoke to Eva Bartlett last week on this. After that happens and that referendum is approved, that can move very, very quickly, very, very quickly, right?
Yes.
So it can happen very fast, and then once it happens, it's going to be they're a part of Mother Russia. Then if there's an attack, all hell's going to break loose. Russia, for their part, have only mobilized their country twice before. I think this is really interesting. Right before World War I, then again when Germany's Nazi government invaded the Soviet Union, and now this. This would be the third time that they've mobilized their government for war.
That's scary when you say it that way.
Yeah, I mean, this is not like a, hey, this happens every week in Russia kind of a thing, right? This is the third time. Now, think about how many times the United States has done this. Right? How many times have we mobilized for war on a regular? We do it on a regular basis,
but in other people's land.
Yeah, but this is the third time that Russia would have done this, and they're not kidding around. And again, Putin said he's not scared of using nuclear weapons. This is President of Russia, Putin, on these nuclear weapons. Take a listen.
They should rob our country of everything. They have started nuclear blackmail. I'm not only talking about the attacks against Zaporozhye nuclear power station that is promoted by the Western curators, but I'm talking about the statements about high-level representatives of the NATO countries about the possibility of using weapons of mass destruction against Russia, nuclear weapons. And those who make such statements against Russia, I would like to remind them that our country also possesses various type of strike weapons, and in some components we have more modern weapons than NATO countries. And if the territorial integrity of our country is threatened, to defend and protect our country and our people, we will use all the means that we have. And I'm not bluffing.
Yeah, I'm not bluffing. Russia, for their part, I mean, right now, the Pentagon analysts that I've been looking at say that there's a 50-50 chance of a nuclear war. 50-50. So, I mean, guys, this is like a time when you need to really, protect
crazy,
your family. I mean, and really think about how do you prepare?
Yeah.
What can you do to prepare yourself?
Well, I was really encouraged because I spent a good part of the morning going through the comments on the piece we did last week about hoarding and how the news media is making fun of people who are
prepping,
stockpiling, and calling them hoarders, right? And most of the comments that I read were, who cares what the news media calls me? I'm just trying to be prepared for an uncertain future, right? And I loved all of these comments, and they were overwhelming, like, screw what the media says. I'm just going to be prepared, right? And so a lot of times, I'm sure we all feel this way collectively, is we're thinking about, like, I go to the store and I'm like, I'm going to buy an extra sack of rice and beans, that kind of thing. Just have them in my dry goods section. And then I think to myself, am I being crazy? Or should I just do this? And you drive around and you think, I'm listening for things, I'm looking for things. Like, this is a rational way to behave at this point. I wonder if those of you in the chat feel this way too, trying to go about your day, but having this now in the back of your head. Do you feel that way? Yeah,
let us know. Like, what are you guys doing to prepare? Because again, I mean, if you watch 60 Minutes last night. So 60 Minutes last night, Antony Blinken told 60 Minutes that the U.S. will bring catastrophic consequences if President Putin instructs his military to use nuclear weapons. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Putin has already lost in terms of what he was trying to achieve. He's lost the war. Like, I don't know if he's smoking crack. I don't know what he's hanging out with Hunter Biden. What is he talking about? given his objective was to erase Ukraine's identity as an independent country. No, I don't think that was ever I don't think that was the mission at all. But yet we will use catastrophic means necessary to attack Russia, and NATO countries are positioning themselves in order to do this. It's absolutely crazy. And National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan made the comments all over the Sunday shows, basically using the same phrase, catastrophic consequences, on every show that he went on. Sullivan said during the 3 different interviews he did on ABC, CBS, NBC, that U.S. officials have called Moscow and warned them specifically about catastrophic consequences of using nuclear weapons. We will use nuclear weapons. Listen to Jake on this catastrophic consequence piece.
We're taking it seriously. It's not the first time President Putin has made a nuclear threat in this conflict. He started way back in February when Russian tanks first rolled across the border, brandishing that nuclear card. And that has not deterred us from providing more than $15 billion in weapons to Ukraine, helping them be able to defend their country. And it will not deter us now. And we have communicated directly, privately, to the Russians at very high levels that there will be catastrophic consequences for Russia if they use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. We have been clear with them and emphatic with them that the United States will respond decisively alongside our allies and partners. And we have protected those communications, which we have done privately to the Russians, but they well understand what they would face if they went down that dark road.
So you know who they haven't been clear, though, with? He says we've been clear with Putin, right? But going on Sunday shows is not a declarative statement to the American public. And so as we continue to tiptoe into a full-scale conflict, you know, we had Russian President Vladimir Putin sitting down and looking eye to eye to camera and saying, this is what we're dealing with, right? And so at least they get it straight from him. We do not get that in the West. It's a bunch of rhetoric around how Putin's doing this bad stuff. We are going to collectively stand up for him. This is why, right? We don't get a full-on, like, explanation of what it's going to cost all of us. And it is going to cost all of us, not just now, you know, of course, high gas prices and energy prices and price of goods is hurting everybody. But when we're talking about possible nuclear fallout, I feel like we deserve a more declarative statement than just appearances on a Sunday talk show circuit.
Maybe they could hire TikTok influencers like they did with COVID, right? And they've released all those 100 TikTok videos with all those COVID influencers.
Again, not helpful.
Like that's how the Biden administration communicates. Go ahead, David.
No, unfortunately, like the people of the United States, we're not going to get any other narrative. We're not. They block all the Russian sources. They block everything so that we can't see another narrative. And unfortunately, you have some of these news channels that are on another side of different issues. But when it comes to war, they all beat the same drum. So everybody that watches mainstream media, they think that, you know, the worst is happening. Like Russia's been threatening nuclear war and all this other stuff, when that is not the case. If you listen to the other side and how, you know, it's more, we're the ones pushing it. We're the ones that are making it going to happen.
Yeah. Did you wear that Zelensky shirt on purpose?
He's getting his Halloween outfit ready.
Yes.
Oh.
That's what I'm going as.
Okay.
But it's true. And it's interesting when you think about the, like you if you're in Europe, you can't get access. You talked about the United States blocking content. Like if you want to find out like what Russian newspapers are saying, you've got to use a virtual private network. And you have to route yourself through the freaking Bahamas to get access to information. Like the United States blocking these websites and these news sources. So is Europe. Europe's blocking them like crazy. So imagine Europeans like sitting there. No wonder we're going to get to the Italy story in a few moments here. No wonder they're fed up.
I was watching CNN Portugal this weekend. I just had it on as I was cleaning the kitchen, and the headline was "Milhares," like that means thousands vote in the Donbass. And I'm like, thousands? It's like hundreds of thousands.
There's 2 million people.
Right. And so the lower third was milhares está a votar. They're voting in the Donbass.
Like a few hundred people.
It's not like that. What is this narrative? Well, even CNN Portugal is like a carbon copy of CNN.
I was watching CNN. I was watching CNN Turkey. Same thing. It's like a carbon copy of U.S. propaganda. Yeah. Like CNN Turkey, CNN Portugal, CNN America. It's like a carbon copy, just with Turkish speakers.
There
and
was
Portuguese.
this event hosted
Bom dia,
by
Portugal.
There was an event hosted by the American Club of Portugal, and they had CNN news anchors from CNN Portugal speaking there. And I was like, no, this should not be, so that we see exactly how they're stamping out their narrative all around the world. Anyway, I've gone on a tangent. I apologize.
So Moscow responded today. So I'm sorry, I was going to play another soundbite here. Jake Sullivan. So Jake Sullivan on these catastrophic consequences specifically talks about, like, we are going to fire back. We are going to hit back with these catastrophic consequences. Make no mistake about it. And then it was interesting because I was, thank you, George Stephanopoulos, for asking the question, because I was thinking, wait a minute, you're just basically admitting now that the United States is actively involved in this war, not even pulling any punches anymore. I mean, we've already seen HIMARS attacks on the nuclear power plant just this weekend, for crying out loud. American-made HIMARS attacking a nuclear power plant. Like, we need to wake up, people. Like, this is absolutely happening. So George Stephanopoulos basically said the question, you're admitting that the U.S. is going to war with Russia. Listen.
So that means taking the fight directly to Russia.
We have communicated to the Russians what the consequences would be, but we've been careful in how we talk about this publicly, because from our perspective, we want to lay down the principle that there would be catastrophic consequences, but not engage in a game of rhetorical tit for tat. So the Russians understand where we are. We understand where we are. We are planning for every contingency, and we will do what is necessary to deter Russia from taking this step. And if they do, we will respond decisively.
Okay. So make no mistake about it, the United States is at war with Russia. If there was any illusion before, now you know flat out. You just heard there Jake Sullivan admitting it. Moscow responded today. The Deputy Foreign Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Ryabkov, said the U.S. And the Americans are undermining Europe's competitiveness, pumping their products into European markets, be they military equipment or hydrocarbons, which the Europeans would rather get from alternative sources under different circumstances. And he said the behavior of the Americans is extremely worrying. He said that the U.S. is trying to destroy Europe, which, by the way, is absolutely the case. We saw the Rand Corporation documents, right?
Yes.
That's exactly what they want to do. The United States wants to cripple the European Union, obviously for the promotion of the U.S. dollar and the American hegemony. He goes on to say, we can see how the Americans are trying to mobilize their satellites, meaning their friends, their vassals, to confront Russia in a more aggressive, hardline manner. Washington's irresponsible, extremely aggressive, extremely assertive course is bringing us all to the dangerous line. We are warning against maintaining this course. And then this afternoon, we learned that the U.S. is now deploying HIMARS to Latvia. The U.S. Army in Europe and Africa Command announced on Sunday that it would be sending 2 HIMARS, high-mobility artillery rocket systems, along with approximately a dozen personnel to Latvia to take part in the NATO-led national readiness military exercises. So deploying as many more advanced high-weapon systems as they can. I thought it was interesting this weekend, by the way, President Trump came out, and he's gotten a lot of flack for this, which I actually kind of enjoyed, because he really has dug it into the deep state. Like, the deep state can't stand Donald Trump. And he said there's no way that the U.S. and NATO wins a war against Russia.
To which they collectively lost their minds.
They slammed him. Like, how can you say that? How can you say that the U.S. would lose to
He
Russia?
does know a little bit about what is involved in the U.S. military, having once been commander-in-chief. But of course, they will accuse him of being a Russian apologist or a secret Russian agent or pro-Russia or any of those
Well, they hate him.
things.
They hate him because he was starting to dismantle the deep state. He obviously wanted to pull back on a lot of different military incursions around the world. And to be fair, he talked about like draining the swamp. He really did not drain the swamp. So let's be fair here. He talked a lot about it, and he was certainly pulling back on our military procurement. He was certainly pulling back on different incursions. The deep state wanted him to spend more money, and he didn't want to spend more money. And they love Biden. The deep state loves Biden because he's basically, he's demented, and he'll do whatever the deep state wants. Oh, you want to spend another $20 billion to Ukraine? Fine, go ahead, do whatever you want. He's a puppet. Obama, Clinton, they all are ready to do the bidding of the deep state, starting World War III. Do you remember Hillary Clinton in this exchange? This reminded me of this exchange, her against Donald Trump on stage talking about nuclear weapons. Take a listen to this exchange. It's very, very telling. Watch.
I find it ironic that he's raising nuclear weapons. This is person who has been very cavalier, even casual, about the use of nuclear weapons. He's advocated more countries getting them, Japan, Korea, even Saudi Arabia. He said, well, if we have them, why don't we use them, which I think is terrifying. But here's the deal. The bottom line on nuclear weapons is that when the president gives the order, it must be followed. There's about 4 minutes between the order being given and the people responsible for launching nuclear weapons to do so.
Okay. Oh, she knows something about that, huh? Like, clearly has spent a little bit too much time, like, knee deep in how quickly I can respond with nuclear weapons. I've got 4 minutes. Okay, 4 minutes. That's enough time for me to go to the bathroom, powder my nose,
Get out of bed.
Do whatever I need to do. So I think Jordan Peterson over the weekend said it best during an interview with Piers Morgan. He's taking a lot of heat for this interview, as you can imagine, which of course means he's right. He says it's naive to think that Putin will lose this war and that the West and Putin will start this massive war by first. He says that this is how Putin's going to do it, is going to turn off the oil and gas spigots first. And that's coming. Watch.
I'd wait till the first cold snap and shut off the taps.
Right.
Well,
because
of course he's going to do that.
He's got the control over the energy.
Of course he's going to do that. He's already warned the West with his insistence that maintenance problems were necessary and the pipelines had to be shut down.
Do you think he will use a nuclear weapon?
If necessary, he'll use a tactical battlefield weapon. But I do know that naive notions that the Russians are going to lose somehow, or that we're going to win, I just don't understand. I don't understand that. Well, what do you mean we're going to win? What are we going to win here exactly? We can't win against Vladimir Putin anyways, because you cannot win against someone you cannot say no to. Period. And we can't say no to Putin because we sold our soul for his oil and gas. And we did that to elevate our moral stature in relationship to saving the planet. And so here we are.
Yeah.
Facing a very dire winter.
You cannot win
Against somebody you can't say no to.
you cannot win against somebody you can't say no to. And he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right that what the European Union has done has dug themselves a hole with a World Economic Forum global reset agenda, which eliminates fossil fuels, turn off nuclear power. And now you have a populace that's rising up. You're seeing a populist revolt in Italy.
Yes.
You're seeing them all over Europe now. You're seeing, and by the way, they won't broadcast these protests, of course, in Germany and other areas. People are fed up and they're watching it unfold. And I'm telling you guys, we are on the precipice here, but tomorrow is the most telling day. We have, I think, we have fewer than 24 hours now in the Donbass. Once we get these votes, once voting is wrapped up tomorrow, we're going to start to see the groundwork laid for this new world order. Like, what comes next is incredibly troubling, and we should all be prepared for it.
And what do you think of the possibility that it's not a nuclear attack, but it's a cyber nuclear attack, as in turn your country off, which they have proven that they can do. Basically, they did it to Ukraine in 2017, all but just shut them all off.
Yeah, I mean, again, that could be a part of it. I think it's going to be a natural resources war.
But again, that also could fall in line with cyber, right? Like, there are ways to shut down your car, your
like how
elevator,
they shut down the pipeline.
Right.
Yeah, the pipeline, right.
More than that, though, like you remote shutdown of, like, they absolutely could do it and just say, you're not on the internet anymore.
Right.
Italy, right?
They could shut
Germany.
down every Tesla.
Yeah.
I see people in the chat saying, EMPs. Jay Thomas saying EMPs, right? Electromagnetic pulse.
Right.
Absolutely the case.
Your computer is gone. It doesn't even turn on anymore, period, right? The elevator that you're in, I'm going to stop that right there, mid-flight, that kind of thing. Like, those things could happen and it would scare the crap out of everybody, right? And then they could say, knock this off, I'll turn you back on, but you better behave yourself.
Well, I think it's really interesting to hear Jordan Peterson saying this, President Trump saying this, a number of people saying, look, we would lose a war against Russia if we were going to provoke that bear.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we have no business. Why the hell, like, Americans and Europeans, quite honestly, should be asking themselves, why are you provoking? Why are you sending billions of dollars? Why are you allowing your governments to provoke this bear? It's about the territorial integrity of this country.
Yeah, show us something that shows that it's deserved. Show us something that justifies that thinking. Show us one thing that justifies it.
Oh, no, we had Kamala Harris say that we're standing for her principles. That's
Her
what we got.
democratic principles.
So that's what we
Actually,
got.
the
That take that to the bank, please.
Even if you think, okay, even if after all of this, after 8 years of them violating the Minsk agreements and continuing to shell and attack the Donbass, right? And you think, okay, and Putin says, you know what, we don't want to be involved in this. We're going to step in to help the people of the Donbass and secure that because there's a genocide going on there. Like, is that enough of a justification? And if you don't, and you think, okay, that happened, but we're all probably on the same side. We don't agree with war and actually military force.
Clarify what you said when you said they. You meant Ukraine. You didn't mean Russia because you segmented, right?
Yeah.
That's okay.
I mean, again, I come down on the sting side of this. Like, war is never the answer, right? So, but at some point after 8 years, when you've tried to go through a peace agreement, and they continue to shell your the ethnic Russians, what do? I mean, what would we do? What would the United States do if Cuba continued to shell Puerto Rico after 8 years? Like a year in and year. Actually, U.S. would probably do nothing, as you see the response to Hurricane Fiona. Like, literally send billions to Ukraine, and the island is underwater and the electricity is shut off.
Yeah.
But we're definitely sending billions to Ukraine. So maybe that's not a good example. We probably would ignore Puerto Rico because 100 years ago, when we took it by force from the Spanish, it was important. Now, for whatever reason, the United States is like, it's not important anymore, I guess. We have enough sugar cane, I guess. I don't know.
I suppose. Yeah, we don't need those workers. Incidentally, my family was part of that migration where the United States, needed workers in Hawaii and took them from Puerto Rico and sent them over to Hawaii. So, yeah, I guess there's no need to do that now.